Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. I think this is the ultimate fighting pistol. Best ever made. Just as good now as it was in 1911. If you want to hear what I got to say about 1911s, stick around. I'm going to talk about the Colt commercial variations over the years. There are others made by other companies, so there's an almost endless array of variations. Colt commercial products. The original Colt commercial product was the government model. That was the civilian terminology for the 1911 pistol, and they started selling them in 1911. They sell the government model to this day. It made the A1 changes that were made in 1924 to the military pistols were immediately adopted into the Colt commercial government models. So it has kept up with that. Then Colt has evolved a number of things beyond the military A1 variation. And one of the first was the Mark IV Series 70. Now that was the first government model I owned. And in an attempt to get a little bit more accuracy out of it, the bushing was made in a kind of a spring-loaded fashion, and the end of the barrel had a little bit of a swell to it. So when this thing went into battery, that swell would kind of interact with those spring fingers on the bushing and tighten up that front end lockup. Indeed, improve the accuracy. And as soon as the action started to open, that bushing became very loose, so it didn't interfere with reliability at all. The problem with those Series 70 bushings is people would pull them off the end of the barrel, clean them, and then kind of force them back on. And apparently they were never really designed to be on and off the end of that barrel swell in that fashion. I was told to leave it on the barrel. When you take it apart, just slide it to the rear of the barrel, clean around it, leave it on, but don't pop it on and off a lot of times. Because occasionally those fingers on the bushing design would break. And when they did that, that would generally jam that slide up, sometimes permanently. You could almost not get them apart depending on how that piece broke and lodged in there. Colt has gone to the Series 80, which was a internal system that locked the firing pin. Firing pin on the 1911 is floating. It's held rearward by a spring. If you drop a loaded pistol from several feet, probably 5 or 6 feet or more, on muzzle down onto a hard surface, the floating firing pin can go forward against that spring and possibly go forward with enough energy to fire a cartridge. So the original 1911 is not completely drop safe. No pistol of that era was drop safe. They hadn't even considered that. The 80 series pistols put an internal lock in that system so that the firing pin was physically locked from going forward until the trigger was pulled. It works fine. It does exactly what it's designed to do. It also kind of complicates the trigger system with a few extra parts. And for a couple of years, gunsmiths couldn't figure out how to give you that super nice 3.5 to 5 pound breaking glass kind of trigger that the 1911 is known for. There was just a little bit of take-up and a little bit of mushiness in there. Nowadays, they know how to work around a Series 80. This is a Delta 10 millimeter, has the Series 80 system in it, and it has a perfectly good trigger pull. They've kind of figured that out now. A way around it with the older pistols, and I will say that most of the aftermarket pistols you buy from Kimber, Wilson, everybody else, as far as I know, they're virtually all 70 series firing pin systems. I think Colt still probably has the patent on that. One way around that drop possibility is to use a titanium firing pin. It's considerably lighter, so that in that drop system it just does not build up quite as much inertia, and it's a lot less likely to fire if dropped. So if that's a concern for you with a 70 series lock work, then you can go to a titanium pin. I believe the 80 series came online in 1983, and in some of the last models they have a Series 90, And I've looked it up. For the life of me, I'm not sure what the changes are with the Series 90. They include the Series 80 firing pin lock. I'm not sure what a Series 90 really means. If perhaps it's just marketing material. Okay, the next commercial was the Gold Cup National Match, introduced in 1957. It had a match grade barrel. It was tightened up in various places to be more accurate. The Gold Cup had adjustable sights, and it also had a kind of a cool raised rib down the length of it, which I think looked really nice. The Gold Cup has been in production off and on, I believe, ever since 1957. It is still in production. It has been upgraded to the 70 series, which is what mine was. It has been upgraded to the 80 series with the firing pin lock. It was always available in 45 ACP. I believe you can get a Gold Cup now also in 38 Super and 9mm, and as well as stainless steel. The next one that came online, which is absolutely my favorite of all the 1911s, is the Commander. And the Commander is both shorter and lighter. In 1949, the United States military asked a number of companies to submit a request for proposals for a lighter sidearm than the 1911, to be chambered in 9mm Luger, and that was intended for issue to military officers who didn't like to lug around a 40-ounce steel sidearm, I guess. That 49 RFP for the military went away. They decided not to do anything with it, but just stick with the 1911A1. Colt, however, took their design for that and introduced it in a model they called the Commander. And part of the Commander's claim to fame was the grip frame was made from aluminum instead of steel. And that took almost a half a pound off the weight of this pistol. And as I said, originally, grip safety was aluminum, mainspring housing was aluminum, and the original Commander slides even had the top of the slide in here, which is normally very thick, was milled thinner. And it saved, perhaps another half ounce or so. But, I mean, this thing was made to be as light as possible. The military test pistols in 1949 were chambered for the 9mm. When Colt brought it out as a commercial model called the Commander, it was introduced in 45. But not long after its introduction, you could get it in both 9mm and 38 Super. And I failed to mention that we'll talk about this in calibers, but the commercial government model from Colt, the second cartridge ever introduced in them, was the 38 Super, what we now call a 38 Super Plus P. But the Commander was eventually available in those. So a lot lighter, shorter slide, shorter barrel. It's a 4 1/4 rather than a 5-inch. And to me, it is the handiest, lightest version of the 1911. So it's always been my favorite. So that came out in 1950. In 1970, they brought out a variation with a steel frame, so just a steel frame weight-wise, but a little bit less weight because it has the 4 1/4-inch barrel and slide. And the steel frame version of the Commander was called a Combat Commander. And after the introduction of the steel frame Combat Commander, the aluminum frame variation had the name changed to Lightweight Commander. Service Ace was the next. I mentioned the .22 long rifle with a floating chamber designed for the military. That was one of the next ones that Colt brought out in the early 70s. And they also sold conversion units for at various points in their over the years. So these have been marketed by Colt in the civilian market various times from the 30s to the 70s. Officer's model. Show you a picture of the officer's model. This came out in 1985. It went even smaller than the Commander. It went from a 4 1/4-inch barrel to a 3 1/2-inch barrel. It also shortened the grip frame so that the magazine held one fewer round. So a 6-round magazine instead of a 7 for the 45, or nowadays we can get 8-rounders for the full size and 7s for the officer. The officer's model was eventually made in both steel frame models and lightweight aluminum models. And the officer's model is, so far as I know, produced to this day. The next after that was the Colt Delta Elite 5-inch all-steel gun. It was made for the 10mm auto when that came on the market. Almost immediately after the failure of Dornhouse and Dixon, both Colt brought out the Delta Elite and Glock brought out their Model 20, a large frame 20, and the companion 21 in 45 ACP. Colt introduced it in 1987. Early ones, the first year of production of the 10 millimeter, they tended to crack the frame up inside the slide, right up above the slide latch area, and eventually Colt just milled a area of that out. That part that flexed too much and cracked was removed, and it worked fine at stopping the slide cracking. This is this particular one was made in '88, I believe, so second year of production. It has that cut to prevent the frame cracking, and in fact, most of the Colts nowadays, depending on the caliber, or virtually all calibers, I think now have that cut on the frame to prevent any chance from cracking a frame. The next variation brought out by Colt was the Colt Double Eagle. Came out with the double action, single action trigger system, so that the pistol could be carried with the hammer down, but around in the chamber. A long, heavy trigger pull, like the double action pull on a revolver, would get you the first shot. When the slide cycles, it cocked the hammer for a light single action style break on the subsequent shots. They thought that was the answer. Jeff Cooper had a saying for that too. He called that an ingenious solution to a non-existent problem. He said if you just learn how to carry the darn things cocked and locked, you don't have a problem. Colt decided they had to follow on with that double action, single action concept, so they redesigned the 1911. They put in the Double Eagle system, brought it out in '89. They continued to make it until about '97. It was never a commercial success. They made it in government 5-inch length. They made commander size. They made some officers models. They made it, according to my research, in 45, 9mm, 38 Super, 10mm, and 40 Smith & Wesson. I believe they made some alloy frames. It was available in both blue and stainless, so they tried everything they could to get this pistol to take off, and it didn't. And there were never a lot of those Double Eagles made or sold. Okay, in 1998, I believe, depending on the source you look at, somewhere between 98 and 2000, Colt brought out Defender model. The Defender is a 3-inch barrel with the same grip frame as the officer's model. So you've got one less round in the magazine. You've got an even shorter 3-inch barrel, still available in both steel and aluminum frames. There is yet another Colt variation that only came out recently. I've not been able to pin down a date, so sometime after 2000. And it is the Colt Concealed Officers Model, CCO. It combines the slide and barrel of a commander with the grip frame of an officer's model. So you got the 4 1/4-inch barrel and slide. You've got 1 round less in the magazine, so a 7-round maximum in the magazine. I'm not sure the calibers it's available in. I have seen very little on it, but to me it makes a little bit of sense, especially if you're carrying appendix. A lot of times the grip length is what will print, and sometimes a little bit longer slide is actually more comfortable to carry in the appendix position than a shorter slide. So that concealed carry officer's model with the commander link slide and the little bit shorter grip frame actually might make some sense. Now, I've not had my hands on a Defender or a concealed carry officers at all, but it just shows the continuing evolution of this. Now, I talked about reliability to begin with, and how the 1911 has, among some people, a reputation for lousy reliability. This is my experience. When you change from the 5-inch system, that the original design of the 1911, and you start shortening things, that's when you start seeing reliability issues. The Commander, in my experience, can be every bit as reliable as a 5-inch gun. In my opinion, the further you get from the original design of this pistol, especially in slide length, the more likely you are to see reliability. There have always been, for a number of years, long slide variations. So instead of a 5-inch slide, we've seen a 6-inch slide. We've even seen a couple of 7s. There are larger frame sizes. Coonan Arms, I believe, was the name of it. They lengthened the grip frame and chambered it for the .357 Magnum revolver cartridge. So there are variations that way. The long slides can add velocity. So a long slide 10mm might make some sense to me. I'm not sure that I want to get that far away from the original design for much of anything else. Double stack variations. So the first was Para Ordnance. They came out in the late 80s, I believe, with some 13, 14, and then eventually maybe even 15 round magazines in 45 with a double stack frame. If you take that double stack 1911 concept to the ultimate, we are now seeing a whole generation of pistols that they're really not a 1911. I guess we could call them a 2011, which is what some gun writers have been calling them. Springfield Armory has one. Kimber has one. One of the big names on the market right now is the Staccato, very expensive. These are typically double action 9mm pistols. They include all the bells and whistles that we see on the latest generations of 1911s, including optic cuts and whatever you might want. They typically run either from a 17 to a 20 round magazine in 9mm, and they may be the way of the future. 9mm have always been available ever since the Commander series. There you could get a 9mm in a Colt or a non-Colt 1911. They're a little hard to find. The 9mm is really coming on strong now. The last thing I'm going to talk about, there are a number of mini 1911 platforms out there. And this is my everyday carry. This is a Kimber Micro 9. I think you can see that even compared to my Commander, there's a drastic difference in size and weight. Kimber makes these in both a Micro, which is a 380, and a Micro 9, which is a 9mm. And I will list for you and I will show you some variations by various companies that either currently in production or in the past. They're not pure 1911s. As I said, this does not have a grip safety, but some of them are pure Micro copies of the 1911. A couple of the coolest, neatest little pistols, I do not own one, but that may have to change before long. Browning makes about a 3/4 scale copy of the 5-inch 1911. And they make it in either 22 long rifle or 380 ACP, and it is just a Micro exact copy of a 1911, grip safety and all. And the quality, it looks to me like they're really nice. They're really nice little pistols. Colt has made a similar size pistol to the Kimber Micro 9 for a number of years called the Mustang, and it was made in 380 ACP. I believe the Mustang might be back in production at this time. There is an older pistol made by Llama. The Llama brand name is still out there in 1911s, but it is not the original Llama Spanish company. The original Llamas were kind of cute little pistols. They had a ventilated rib down the length of the slide. And they had the grip safeties and everything. They were a little Micro copy of a 1911. They came in both 32 ACP and 380. SIG has a couple of Micro pistols on the order of the Kimber. They have a 238, which is a 380, and they have a 938, which is a 9mm. Very similar in size. Springfield Armory makes a smaller 1911 pattern pistol. I think a little bit bigger than the Browning Micro 22. And part of the reason they did that was to scale the longer system down to a 9mm or 40 Smith & Wesson size. And I'll talk about this in the calibers video, but the 40 Smith & Wesson has a very checkered reputation in standard size 1911 pistols. There's something about the geometry of that short, fat 40 that just doesn't lend itself to the 1911 system. It just is not known to feed real well. So they scaled one down. They call it the EMP, Enhanced Micro Pistol, and it is available in 9mm and 40 Smith & Wesson, and it's my understanding it's very reliable in 40, very popular in 9mm. And it's all the fancy stuff you can have custom done to a 1911, you can do to a Springfield Armory EMP. The last of these that I will mention, and again, it was not a pure 1911 copy. It did not have a grip safety. I had a couple of friends that carried these back in the days, 70s and 80s. And that was the Star Model PD, another Spanish gun. Not necessarily the highest quality pistol in the world, but at the time it was the smallest 45 semi-auto you could get. It's a single action style pistol. And one friend I had that carried it extensively, he said the Star is something that you shoot a little and carry a lot. Because he said if you shoot it a lot, I think you're going to wear it out pretty rapidly. But these Micro pistols, I think, are extraordinarily popular. They're going to be a wave of the future in the 1911's story. as well as the 2011s, those high-tech, high-capacity 9mm that give you all the advantages of the 1911 in trigger pull and reliability and ruggedness, with a lot of rounds, the availability of easy optics mounting and everything else. So the 1911 is a long ways from dead. It's probably more alive in more variations today than it has ever been in its history. So those of you that think a 1911 in someone's holster marks them as a FUD, you're the fool. There is nothing outdated about the 1911. It has kept up with the times. It has been more modified, changed, and upgraded than any other semi-automatic pistol in the history of the world. And I truly believe it is the ultimate fighting pistol and probably will be for a long time to come. Now, does that mean you can't adequately protect yourself with a Glock or something like that? No, absolutely you can. They're newer technology. They require no gunsmithing at all. You just throw parts into them, they work. In the 1911s, to go beyond drop-in parts level, which is what the military 1911A1 was, there was virtually no fitting done to those pistols. They were rugged, they were reliable, they were not the most accurate. The ones we see nowadays are kind of customized, and they need gunsmithing attention. Glocks don't. So I'm not saying the 1911 is the be-all and end-all, but I'm saying it's a long ways from dead. Thank you for watching clear to the end of this. I hope I haven't bored everybody too much. I'm going to get into calibers next time. Then I'm going to get into some of the custom modifications that really enhance this pistol and make it an effective fighting tool today. And then at the end, I said I'm going to talk to Dick Heine. I think he's perhaps the premier custom builder of this pistol. And so long as he's still going and able to do some work, he's still a viable resource, and his sights are second to none. So we'll wrap this up with an interview with Dick Heine. Thank you for watching. Hope you're going to watch the future ones. Please, if you can, give me a subscription, a thumbs up. Make all the comments you want. Tell me what an old FUD I am. I dare you. Thanks, folks.
Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.